Brought to you by Mr. Pros TV, streaming from Tempe, Arizona. And we're live in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hey guys, Jordan Nielsen here, host of Real Estate Pros on Mr. Pros TV. And today we're in Tempe, Arizona in our studio with Randy Schoenfeld of My Home Group. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to join me here on Real Estate Pros.
Well, I'm glad to be here.
Awesome, man. So for those watching that don't know who you are, you're around number 30 agent at My Home Group, right? So My Home Group's at 1,700.
1,700 agents.
So they've grown quite a bit. So we can get into a little, so we can get into more about My Home Group in a little bit, but we'll give you an opportunity to introduce yourself. Give us a little background on yourself, what you did prior to real estate, what interested you in getting into real estate, and we'll go from there.
Okay. Well, as a kid, I always had entrepreneurial spirit. You know, started out with a baseball card shop at 13 and had it for about 5 years.
Did you have the Beckett books?
Oh, we
looking
had it
at
all.
Values and
we
all
had
that
it
stuff?
all. Yeah.
Heck yeah.
Yeah. Actually, a part owner in our card shop was a Hall of Fame baseball player.
Oh, really?
So I had a lot of really cool experiences meeting other ball players and just getting the understanding of business. And then went on to University of Florida for undergrad. It was a journalism undergrad. Ended up getting a job with Coca-Cola doing marketing and sales, and enjoyed that, but just wanted to learn more about business. And so got my master's in business at the U of A in Tucson, and an entrepreneurship program in operations, and thought, I wanted to start my own company one day. And so I got a really good basis for understanding business plan development, project management, and understanding how a company works from all aspects, not just the sales and marketing, but got a really good full view of how things work. I worked for a large cheese company for almost 9 years. After that, doing project management and operations management, had a team of about 60 employees at one point.
Wow.
And decided, I really like this, but I started doing some investing in real estate on the side, just personal property, and started buying multifamily properties. And when I hit enough properties where I had a good rental income, I decided, I really enjoy real estate. I want to do this full time. And so I was able to leave my company knowing that I wasn't just jumping. I actually made strategic steps along the way to be able to go ahead and do this. And timing was perfect. I can't tell you I timed it perfectly, but I got lucky, let's just say. But in 2010, started buying a lot of the properties, and single family homes as well as multifamily properties. And once I hit the number that made sense, I was able to my wife said, hey, why don't you just do this? You really enjoy this. Why continue to work in a job that you're not feeling as fulfilled that you could be? And so I decided to do that. And so I started working with clients, but mainly started focusing on my own properties, and then started building up clientele along the way.
So are most of the projects that you work on or have in the past, do you buy to fix and flip, or do you buy to hold as rentals?
Both. I came up with a portfolio that made sense to me at the time of how to maximize the money that I was investing. And so some of those were multifamilies where we were bringing in 3, 4 to 6 plexes, smaller ones. I wasn't doing large complexes, stuff that I could still manage while I was full-time employee at a company. And then started, I started there, and when I felt pretty comfortable with my clientele, started adding more to the portfolio, and then started buying some single-family homes as well. And so it kind of created a mix where I had rental income, which was greater from the multifamily, but then also preparing for hopefully a market increase with the single-family homes, which we're going to see a really handsome increase in percentage in gains. Yeah.
So you have a pretty diverse background. Obviously, it's not like you got out of high school and you just went into real estate. You kind of you're pretty versed. You got a good education at U of A and out in Florida, and you were in corporate America for a while. So that's something that we have in common. I was in banking for a long time and then transitioned. So what did you like the most about transitioning from more of the corporate world to real estate?
Well, so I liked the corporate world. There was a lot that I learned from it, right? Structure, business planning. So those are really the key parts that I liked. It got hard when you started having a lot of employees, and every day I could go in and not know what I'm going to face and have 60 different personalities to deal with. And then how do you motivate them to do the best that they can each day? And that's a lot of people, right? So that part I enjoyed because I had a lot of really good employees that I really enjoyed working with. But there's some days where I wanted to focus on what I wanted to do for the company, and that I get to do that now, right? It's my company. Right. I get to focus on the key objectives that we have, and move forward with those. And I have employees that work with me now. There's a lot of vendors that I work with, as well as guys on staff that work with me. But it's a smaller group, and I'm able to keep my hand on the pulse a lot more, and work, with them together.
So how long have you been in real estate now? So
I started investing in 2010, and I've been a full-time agent though for about 4.5 years now. Okay, 4.5 years. About the same time that we've kind of met, or we've known each other. Actually, I guess Lister Pro's only been around for about 4 years, but. It was funny because I've known you for a while, but I've known you mostly over the phone. So it's good to put a face with a name. But when we're talking about real estate and going full time, obviously there's a lot of options when we're talking about brokerages, right? So I think you mentioned you were number 30 agent. So why did you choose well,
my
that
home
was just
group?
in the sequence of agents. So they were a small company at the time. And I met Mark and Jeremy, who are our brokers, and just seemed like a really solid guys. And the plan that they had made sense. They were looking to grow a brokerage, and they were reasonable with the fees that they charge the agents, and they were willing to help people out. So I wanted to go to a company that was small enough where I wouldn't feel like a number. Right. But I also wanted to,
How are you feeling today? No, I'm just kidding.
It's funny because, I have an office in the office, and I see them daily, and it's a fun group to work with, and they've grown a lot, professionally as well. I mean, we have weekly activities that go on that are for personal development, coaching. There's a lot of, really good services that they provide. Especially there's something they call Workshop Wednesday, and that is something where throughout the entire day there are workshops free of charge for agents, whether new or experienced agents. Whether there's a part of the business that you don't get, there's someone there to help coach you through that. So there's I'm in my 40s, so I'm not the social media king, right? But we've got people who come in and teach us how to appropriately market on social media. We have 20-somethings that they already know the social media side of it, but they need help with identifying, how do I work with clients, things like that. Right. So I enjoy working there. It's a good environment. Yeah. And it also fosters a lot of teamwork. There's a lot of brokerages who everyone kind of keeps to themselves, or they close their door. They don't want anybody to hear what deals they have going on. It's exactly opposite there. I enjoy working with the group because my door is kind of always open, right? I mean, if someone wanted to knock on it, I don't like hearing everyone else's conversations, right? But if someone has a question, they knock on my door. I'll answer for them. I can go to someone else's door and knock on their door, and we're mentioning with rehab properties, I do focus a lot with rehab properties, whether for myself or for working with investors. And there's several other agents that do that there as well. And we actually meet up once a month. We do a lunch and just kind of talk and see what's working, kind of best case practice, best practices sure. in or what's working for them at that time. So that's kind of fun because you don't feel like you're, trying to figure it out on your own.
Right.
But there's always opportunities too. So this is a big market. Phoenix is a huge market. There's so many sub pockets, and there are a lot of investors here. They're all seeking, the best deals, but there are opportunities every day.
Right. So that's a good point. When it comes to investing, you could focus on so many things: multifamily, single property, or single family homes. What has been kind of your niche around investing, and how are you able to identify good properties to invest in, which is something I think a lot of people struggle with, like, where do I find the good properties? They're not foreclosures. Where do I find them?
Well, it's funny because we have a lot of agents who want to go work with investors, but they don't get the numbers part. And that's the most important part when you're working with an investor. So you have to speak numbers. And, it's not just about, looking for this next property for someone. It's how do you identify the property? How do you identify costs associated with bringing that property to either rent ready or to rehab the property? And so that takes a lot of time to experience. It's not just something that you can watch a video on and do. There are a lot of hidden costs that you don't realize when you take on a project.
Sure.
So it's being able to factor those in. And I used to purchase properties at the courthouse, on the courthouse steps. I'd bid by myself down there and against, there's a lot of different people down there. And then I was also finding properties on the MLS. And then when you get to build up enough volume, people start calling you. I've got this opportunity, I've got that opportunity. And that's when things really start to click even more. That's sometimes where you find even better deals. And then, working with clients. So whether it's a rehab that I do for myself, or if I have an investor that says, I'm looking for this, I then try to find out what's their goal. Are they looking to rent this property? Are they looking to rehab and flip the property? And then sit down with them and go over, what their costs are going to be. How long is this going to take to rehab? And then just try to figure out, what's their best rate of return and work with them.
So what are some of the best practices that you do to help kind of identify good fit properties? If you use like an Excel sheet, you just plug stuff in, or do you have like a program that scrubs the MLS? There's tons of different ways to identify and try to analyze properties.
I've adapted my own Excel spreadsheet that has formulas that state. So, for example, if I see something hits the market, within about 15 minutes, I can identify this is something that I should write an offer on. I sit down and go over it. I do a market analysis, obviously, first. And it's not just the CMA that most agents will do, right? They'll type it in. There's certain sales that may not make the CMA. So if you have something that's off market, you need to be using also the local tax records, making sure that you get something that was a foreclosure or something that didn't go through a normal sale transaction. Those are numbers that count, because that's actually the numbers that I'm going to be using to play with when I decide if this is a good value or not. I'm not looking at necessarily the retail price, because I'm not looking to pay retail, and neither are my investors, right? So we're looking for a significant value. And then from there, we're able to make the improvements that we need to on a property to be able to list it for retail or even higher.
So what is the hardest part about buying and doing the investor piece of real estate? Is it identifying right properties? Is it staying on budget when you're doing the rehab? What is the...
Well, it's equally finding the best value, right? But then also managing that. So having the right people in place to do the work for you.
Oh, gotcha.
So you'll find, you can find a great deal, but then if you don't have the right team in place, you don't have the right plumbers, electricians, handymen, drywall, painters, those trades are very difficult to find steady, dependable, reliable tradesmen who are doing those jobs. And you'd think that would be kind of the easy part, or at least some people would, I got a plumber, he's going to do this job. Getting them to finish on time, on budget, that's really hard to do. So, I always have to create an allowance for, if we're going to be able to do it for this price. But it's always estimating properly. You don't want to, overpromise and underdeliver. I'm always very realistic. And I can walk into a property now. I feel that comfortable. I can walk into a property and within 15 minutes of being in the property, assess the entire cost of what it would cost to do an entire rehab of the property. And so that feels good, and knowing that I can walk in and say, okay, if we're going to do this flooring, we're going to change this, put in these countertops, do we keep the cabinets, do we change the cabinet, things like that. I can, within 5%, tell you what it's going to cost me to do this project. And so it's fun, but it's also, that's the exciting part about it, is knowing, okay, this townhome is $150,000. Can we do this for $16,000 and put it on the market, for $210? Is this something that we can do? And so, because there's a lot of competition out there, a lot of other people trying to do what I'm doing, and I see a lot of people making a lot of mistakes too. A lot of people watch a couple videos on TV, right? They buy the $99 videotapes and they think they're house flippers, and they make a lot of mistakes. And I feel bad for a lot of people who are doing that, because they can really get into a lot of trouble. A lot of the investors who aren't using their own money, they might be borrowing money, getting loans, hard money loans.
Right.
And they're getting burned, so you really have to know what you're doing before you just
And
jump.
I see that is probably one of the hardest things. And, when people want to get into investing, they kind of lack the experience that you've kind of already gone through over the last 8 years, And so what, that's not necessarily a traditional real estate transaction. Is there a fee associated with, hey, if I say, hey, Randy, I want to go buy an investment property, can you help me identify, is it like, do people usually get a part of the upside of the sale of the investment home, or how does that work with
it depends. So for example, I have investors who are looking for rental properties. So they'll say, hey, here's what I'm looking to do. I inherited $200,000, or I'm leaving my company and I want to take whatever I have in my 401k and do something with it, because they're self-directed IRAs. There's a lot of different paths you can do. You don't just have to roll your money over into the next company that you work for. There are different avenues, and so helping them identify. For example, if they had they're looking for a rental property, I could go in there and say, look, I've got this place. It needs some work. I think for $8,000 we could get you up to this level. Your rental rate would be $1,000 a month or $1,200 a month, but we could get you to $1,400 or $1,500 based on these improvements, because this is what this neighborhood would command, and walk them through that type of situation. Now, rehabbing properties is a little bit different. So sometimes I'll do a joint venture with somebody. Sometimes I'll just point them to a property, say, okay, we'll identify this property, and I can work with them and provide them tradesmen who can do those jobs for them. So I stay out of that part of it, because that's actually not something that I'm supposed to even get involved with. But I like helping people find the good value and then point them in the direction of people who will do a good job for them that I trust, and then they work that out together. But then I help them sell the property on the sell side.
I gotcha.
Right.
So that's obviously one of the biggest variables is the rehab cost, and it sounds like you've kind of worked through the kinks, or you have a pretty good list of good contractors, good reliable contractors. That's
the hardest part of it.
Are you finding that even those good contractors that you have sometimes falter?
You always have that. There may be times where I could go 3-4 years, with a great rapport, and then sometimes people just kind of fall off, or they might take on more than they should with other projects or things like that. So it does help to have, a really strong core group of vendors.
So when you're buying a property to, we'll say, fix and flip or rent, what are the trends in 2018 that you're seeing where you're getting the most return on your investment? Do you do like laminate flooring and paint the cabinets? Why is there certain things that make the house more appealing in 2018 that are pretty cost effective that are make sense for an investor?
Well, it depends. So there's not, like, for example, there are some big suppliers in town that provide like Floor and Decor or something like that, who are large flooring sales. They have their own little books out that say these are the new colors of this year. But I think it's really important to know the neighborhoods. So when you're identifying a property, before you go in and just put, marble floors or marble countertops or granite or whatever, you have to know the value of the property, what the people are looking for in that neighborhood, what has sold in that neighborhood, how quickly those properties have sold. So, for example, I just picked up something last week. And I know, there were 3 properties in that community, and they all had the same looking kitchen in there. And that's fine because those homes sold within 7 days on the market. So that's a very good indicator, right, of what people want in that neighborhood, okay? So why buck the trend on that one, right? But if you see other properties where there might be 8 homes that have sold and they all have completely different, kitchens or not updated kitchens or certain color schemes that aren't working, it's really important to do that. And it's kind of hard because if you're just starting out or just doing your first project, you don't really have access to that. To see what those are, or do you have an agent that's working with you that is going to identify that for you? So that's key is knowing that part. So I can walk in and say, okay, this is what is sold. These are what they look like. Here's what we should do at this property. Let's go this direction.
Mm-hmm.
When I do it myself, I already know like I said, within 15 minutes what I'm doing. I'm already placing orders on all the materials that we're going to be using, and know exactly what we should be marketing that property at, the price point.
We know it's hard work. I'm curious, what % of the properties do you look at, do you actually buy? Just so people can get a grasp of, I'm not just going to go look at one property and I'm going to buy it. What's a realistic expectation on checking out houses?
I probably look at 50 properties a day online.
Okay, gotcha.
And then I'll probably visit 3 or 4.
Mm.
And that's based on doing some conversations with listing agents to find out, what the buyers are or the sellers are really looking to sell it for. So, for example, if there's 15 properties in a neighborhood, I'll look around, see what things are selling for. Where's there an opportunity? Because there's not opportunity in every house, right? You have homeowners who may have, a lot of money left on their loans. They're very small amounts of equity in the property. Those usually aren't opportunities. There are foreclosures out there. Sometimes I buy bank-owned properties, and those are a little bit riskier, right? Because a lot of them you don't get to do inspections, or sometimes they don't even have utilities turned on at the properties. Mm. So there are times where I have to negotiate with the bank to say, okay, I'll pay for the power, or I'll do so I can do my inspections. I'll turn these things on. We'll have to get like little side notes written out, because if something happens to the property, I would, could be held responsible. I think that's what they try to push for. But so it's, there's different properties that, I see stuff that is really bad. A lot of times that where other people see junk, I see value, I see potential, and I see profit. There are other ones that they just look really bad, and I see run, run Forrest, run, right? Because there's so many properties that are in disrepair. So, like I said, I could look at 50 properties in a day, narrow it down to maybe 3 or 4 to go check out. And of those 3 or 4, I might not buy something. Those might not be realistic purchases. Sometimes you walk in there and you might just see pictures online of something, but they don't show you that the back half of the house burned down, right? So it kind of wasted an hour of my time there, right? But then again, if there was nothing wrong with it and no one else drove to the property to take a look at it, I like the early bird gets the worm. So I like the chase, the hunt, to find value for my clients or for myself.
Yeah. So there is definitely a lot of work that goes into scrubbing through properties, identifying which ones are actually worth potentially seeing, and then even seeing those, figuring out which ones make sense.
Right. Well, early on, when I started doing this, back in 2010, I might have gone to physically view 30 or 40 properties before I made a purchase.
Wow.
Now I'm able to dial in a lot faster, but it took that much time to figure out if that's something worth chasing after or going for.
Talk to us about what's the best and the worst deal you've ever dealt with? Because you've done it for a long time, since 2010.
I've done it. Okay, so knock on wood. I don't know where there's wood around here. I'd say probably the worst deal that I did netted about $7,900, and that was.
Have you made money on all of your projects?
Knock on wood, I've never lost on a property. So my worst proposition was $7,900, and that was like a 4-month turnaround. So that's not bad. And it was a $160,000 purchase. So it's not profitable by any stretch, but that was my second deal. The first deal I actually made pretty good sum amount. But I usually shoot for doubles and triples. I'll go for singles too, but I'm not a home run hitter. So because those ones, people who are always looking for the home run, they strike out a lot too, right? So I learned baseball early on. I'll get a base hit. It's good for the team, right? So, but doubles and triples are really where I shoot for. So, a lot of people you'll see on TV, we're at 22% or we don't do anything less. It's getting tight around here. So the margins are getting slimmer. I see people doing deals at 6, 7, 8%. I don't really touch those. I like to be in the upper teens, lower 20s. And I still find those. I don't get them every day, right? I have to work and I have to dig through a lot of stuff to get some of those deals. But I find those to be great returns because that's, 20, 22% in 3 months. And I'm able to turn a property, pick it up, do a rehab in 4 to 5 weeks, and then have it on the market. I use your services to take the shots. I stage the properties. Your team comes in. There's about 3 or 4 of your photographers that I know now, and take great shots, and it's on the market for less than 10 days. So a lot of the deals are closed. A lot of the deals are going under contract in 3 to 4 days.
Wow.
And so, the market's hot, but it's identifying the property, doing a good job with the property, and then marketing it to the right clientele.
That is impressive, though.
Yeah.
I was expecting I lost $40,000 on this.
No, I've met those people.
My worst is I've only made $7,900. I'm like, wow, that's impressive for being in the business that long. That goes to show that when it comes to properties, you take pride in doing due diligence around the property. Make sure you know what you're getting into. It's not like you walk into a house, you peel back the wallpaper, and it's a bunch of mold behind it or something. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'm very discerning, so I do pass up on a lot of deals. A lot of people, take deals that I don't, I pass up on, and I always wonder, how did they do, right? So you can look back and see, what they sell it for.
Too?
Sometimes, yeah. Oh, okay. There's a few. If I ended up missing out, let's say someone told me I can have the deal, and then I get there and then they sold it to somebody else, even though they told me, it happens, right? I like to follow up, see what happens after that, and know, that I make a good decision. And when I go back and look at it, I'm really glad that I didn't choose those properties. So looking back, did I miss out on maybe a couple of home runs? Maybe, because I thought maybe they were too good to be true.
Yeah.
And so maybe they turned out to be really good deals for some people, but I really like solid investments. I don't go for pie in the sky.
You're turning them pretty fast.
We are. So I can turn, the same money 4 times a year. Which is, if you're like in a restaurant, right? You're a waitress, and you want to turn tables, right? Because that's your time to make money during that dinner time. So you want to turn the tables. I like to turn, the deals. I can get 4 times a year. There are other people who might shoot for more, others who shoot for less. I shoot for projects that I can manage, do a really good job in a short amount of time. Not cutting corners, but doing a good job, and then delivering the product. So it's also fun is because when I'm representing either myself or a seller who's an investor, I like getting to meet the new buyer of the property too, because I like hearing the feedback that I get from them on our remodels. But usually if it's a young guy, we send him, a case of beer of his flavor. And I usually ask the agent what it is, and actually like to show up and meet them. Sometimes you'll have. I had one in January. There was a 20-something lady. She purchased a home, and she really liked the decorations on the wall. And I was like, "That's my staging." And she's like, "Well, where did you get this?" And she asked me 2 or 3 times. I said, "You know what? You can have this entire wall." That just made her experience that much more fun and enjoyable in the place. And but it also lets me know that we're on track, doing the right things with the properties, that people are really enjoying how we're, rehabbing the property.
Awesome.
So.
Well, this has been very educational, informational for sure. And if somebody watching this is interested in maybe asking you some questions about investors, or maybe an investor looking to potentially buy something, how does somebody get a hold of you?
I'm at randyschoenfeld@gmail.com. My phone number is 480-268-5899. I'd probably get 6 calls a day, people asking me, a friend of theirs either worked with me, and they're trying to figure out, what can I do? I even have old coworkers from my, previous corporate job that will call me up and say, hey, you know, I've got X amount. Can you help me find a property? And that's kind of fun because now, you know, we already have rapport, but they're also trusting me to work with them on their next investment property. So that part's fun for me too.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And you're batting 100, man. You never.
Well, I'm batting better than 100, right?
Yeah, you bet more than 1,000.
1,000.
Well, I'm just saying you've never lost, so you're batting 100.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying.
Don't
batting
jinx me.
1,000.
Yeah.
Gonna take it.
So that's the best part about it is helping people, especially when just recently I have an older gentleman who owns an entire mobile home park. Okay, he owns all of the units. He saw a property that I worked on and said, you know what, I'm looking to purchase, you know, several homes. I want to do what you did with this property. And so now, you know, he's in his 80s. He's got the hunger. He's always been investing in properties. But it's fun to work with someone like that because there's things that I can learn from someone like him. But then also he's looking to me to say, look, this guy knows how to find the deals right now that he's, you know, because he doesn't know how to chase down some of those deals. So
right.
That's fun.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Randy, for joining me on Real Estate Pros. It was nice sitting down with you and talking real estate. So.
And if I can plug your product, I really appreciate it. You guys do a great job. I listed a property last week. Just a little story.
Sure.
Listed a property last week, and there was a competing property in the same complex, and the agent just took shots from her iPhone, and it looked absolutely horrible. And the client, the seller of the property, came over to me and said, you know, how did your product go under market in 3 days, and I've had mine on for 11. And I said, your photos are absolutely horrible. And I said, you need to call your agent and tell her that that's not acceptable, you know, because people are buying properties, seeing them online. You know, you got to get them in the door. And you guys do a great job, and I trust you guys in that process. So,
awesome. Well, we appreciate that, Randy.
Yeah.
And we will see you guys on the next episode.